Every year, millions of people leave their country to move to Europe in the hope of a new, better life. However, in this journey, they often come against challenges such as racism. Every year, millions of people leave their country to move to Europe in the hope of a new, better life. However, in this journey, they often come against challenges such as racism and social exclusion. This AMIF project opens up a new path for the inclusion of migrants, who, if they are embraced as valuable members of our communities, they can contribute to the welfare of the European Union as a whole.
A very warm welcome to all of you that joined our second session of Rethinking Integration on a European level today. Earlier in the morning, we focused on social cohesion on a local level. We reflected around power structures, racism, white saviorism, and stereotypes. And we came to the importance of cooperations and working together with local communities and organizations. And this is basically the focus of today's session, to see and understand better how the interaction with host communities and active participation can be facilitated. And we'll talk around issues of volunteering, the good and the bad and the dangerous aspects of volunteering, but also the importance of it. And I hope that we'll have another very interesting session. Today we'll have two guests. One of them you probably know already from this morning. So Socrates, you're still there. Welcome again. Socrates is one of the Embracing partners and will share about his experience in the pilot when it comes to the topic of interaction with host communities and active participation. As a second guest, we welcome Despina. She's the president of Symbiosis, which is a Greek NGO. And you are also based as one of our pilots in Thessaloniki. And you're advocating for democratic participation in political processes that are free of discrimination and exclusion. I'm very much looking forward to your input, Despina. I think you can provide us with some very valuable insights. Before we start, just a reminder to the audience, this is meant to be an interactive session, so you're always very welcome to use the comment section, the chat, the question and answer, or the raise your hand button to ask questions or to do comments around what our participants and panelists share. And you know also that we are still on Zoom, so please keep your microphone unmute when you're not speaking. And I think now is the time for me to stop speaking and I directly hand over to you, Socrates, to share from the experience that you have in your pilot with host communities and active participation. The stage is yours. Welcome back again.
Thank you very much, Olivier. 1 minute to share my screen. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, we see it.
Perfect. Okay. So my name is Socrates Syrri, and I am the project manager for the Embracing project in Enkomi in Cyprus. As you have already known, the municipality of Enkomi is a partner of the Embracing Project Consortium. Enkomi is located in the center of Cyprus at Eastern Mediterranean. So here you can see Cyprus. okay, in the center of the country. A geographical crossroad in a political complex region itself is divided since Turkey's invasion in 1974. Cyprus has witnessed a tremendous increase in the number of people seeking asylum during the last years, especially through a UN buffer zone. According to Eurostat reports, Cyprus continued to receive the most first-time applicants for asylum per capita in Europe, 12 times the EU average. Syrians continue to make up the largest number of new applications, but has been a steady increase in the number of migrants arriving from Africa. Angomi participates as a pilot city to the project, and our beneficiaries are all newcomers from Africa, namely Nigeria, Somalia, and Cameroon. Okay. Engomi, let's say something about my town. Engomi is a suburb of capital city Nicosia, known with its medieval name Nicosia. Actually, Engomi municipality will be merged among with other two municipalities within Nicosia in 2024. Engomi was created during the 16th century and during the building of the new Venetian walls of Nicosia, and its name means new town. Nea Komi in Greek is new town. Engomi's initial center was the area near the old Greek Orthodox churches of St. Nicholas and St. Procopius. Engomi became municipality in 1986. The original small village expanded rapidly and now is a major business, commercial, sports, and educational center of Cyprus, and also one of the most developing residential areas of the Nicosia district. Two out of 4 private universities are located in Engomi, namely University of Nicosia and European University of Cyprus. And for that reason, Engomi hosts many foreign students, including European students and students from third countries. Engomi has also a large diplomatic presence. Many embassies such as USA, Russia, Ukraine, Italy, India are located in the area. The municipality of Engomi has been participating for the last years in projects for integration of third country nationals. Among other, the European project programs for the integration of third country nationals by local authorities, and the project Youth Empowerment Innovation Project, YAIP. In addition, Engomi participates in the European project MIICT in order to address the challenge of migrant integration through the co-creation and improve ICT services with migrants, public sector services, and NGOs. So let's move to our today's topic. What are the specific goals regarding the topic of integration with the host community and the active participation? Our first goal is to give our beneficiaries the opportunities for socialization and interaction with the locals, with Cypriots. Secondly, to learn Greek language, as language is a very important aspect for their easy and effective communication interaction with the host community. And last, to prepare them and support them to find a job in order to participate actively to society. All the above are planned in order to assist the integration progress of migrants. And as Embracing Project uses the holistic approach, we work with a multidisciplinary team. More specifically, in this field, we work closely with volunteers, social workers, psychologists, and the Greek language teacher. Okay, so what is being done in order to achieve these goals? First of all, we give opportunities for socialization, interaction with the locals through trips, events, sports, and volunteering. And I would like to talk a little more about volunteering. It's indeed very important to see migrants participate actively in volunteer actions, working with locals in joint groups for a common goal. It helps them to know and be connected with Cyprus and locals. On the other hand, local volunteers participate in various activities of the project and help us especially to inform about Cyprus culture and attitudes and give guidance to migrants. And it's a blessing when the locals and migrants develop friendships, exchange telephone numbers, and meet outside the framework of the project. Another important action to achieve the goal of integration and active participation is to learn the locals' language, because will help them to be able to communicate effectively and sufficiently with the locals. So we provide them twice a week with Greek language lessons. Finally, we prepare beneficiaries and help them to find a job. It is extremely important for migrants to find a job to improve their living conditions, but also to feel part of the host society. So we prepare them through seminars and meetings to be able to act independently and face cases of discrimination, and to gain the capacity to communicate effectively or create their CVs or search and apply for a job by themselves. We have also mediated in some cases, and now 3 out of 6 of our beneficiaries have already found a good job. Okay. Finally, which challenges have come up in trying to reach these goals? A big challenge is xenophobia and stereotypes. We have to fight to stereotypes like migrants are thieves or dirty, or Cypriots are racist. Of course, it's easier to work with a small group of migrants to change their minds than to break stereotypes throughout the local society. So we work with the migrants through meetings and seminars, but the final solution is actually given when friendships develop between migrants and the locals. However, discrimination is always the real problem, and is always there. In some cases, locals give priority to locals and left migrants in the end, for example, in bus lines or line for COVID test. Or the terms of the contract, a job contract, were not observed, while this will not be will be more difficult to happen if they were Cypriots. Another big challenge was COVID pandemic, because it made communication and interaction between all people more difficult in general. Moreover, it became difficult to find the people in charge at the Ministry of Education and enroll our beneficiaries to the Greek language classes. Finally, we can mention that volunteering is a challenge, since volunteers spend their free time and consequently they don't feel committed to offer long-term assistance to the project. And this is always an issue for us to find a new volunteer or replace a volunteer because someone cannot continue to the project. Okay. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Socrates, for all the insights that you provided from your pilot. Are there any questions? Okay, I don't see any questions at the moment. If they come up later, Socrates will stay, so no problem. Socrates, you already mentioned like the role of volunteering and the importance of it, and I think this is probably something that Despina can connect to a lot, because you, like, with your experience, you bring a lot of a background when it comes to intercultural education, human rights, migration, and refugees. So you have a very broad perspective when it comes to this topic. And I'm very happy that we can welcome you today and to really see what we're actually talking about when we're talking about mutual welcoming. What does that mean in the end? And how important is the engagement of arriving in a new society? So Despina, the stage is yours. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me as a guest person at Embracing. As Symbiosis also participates in other programs and projects on European integration, if included. So sharing and exchanging is very important, and sort of across the lines, horizontally, vertically. And this is the way we go about everything in Symbiosis. And I would like to thank you, especially Paola from the Metropolitan Agency in Thessaloniki, for introducing us. And this can be a first step. I would like to start from sort of the theoretical framework with which Symbiosis, which is also an organization that is the Council of Europe School of Political Studies in Greece, operates. So we find that integration is an ambivalent concept, often resting on the very precarious and difficult balance between the need for the recognition of diversity, which allows the migrant not to feel the object of contempt as a member of another culture, and the desire for assimilation, which is motivated from the legitimate aspiration to equal perspectives for social and professional advancement. We actually advocate for democratic participation of all. The dominant integration paradigm often generates exclusion, in our view, as it presupposes immobility, a condition not possible for many residents and migrants and refugees as well. So it is important to reframe integration away from this current dominant and top-down paradigm, and instead conceptualize it as a relational practice constituted by multiple incremental and transformative, formal and informal encounters, what you called mutual exchanges between displaced people, places, institutions and services, and local communities that are developed to endure and to maintain life. Inhabitation, which is a term we opt for, is ultimately the result of
Despina,
daily strategies.
Despina,
Yes.
so sorry, because I thought that you have a presentation already prepared, right?
I do.
And we don't see it at the moment. So maybe you share it, so it connects to what you're sharing.
Absolutely.
Ah, perfect.
Okay. So I could go on talking about the work we undertake, as you suggested, with Symbiosis. In the last 10 years, since we started in 2011, so this year is actually the 11th year. And I could start by showing you a publication that we have already published last year, 2 years ago, after a Jean Monnet project which is the academic programs of the European Union, to which unfortunately civil society organizations can no longer participate, according to the recent Commission decision, which is this one. I don't know if you can see it. It's called
Yes, we see it.
Narratives. And what we see on the front page is a member of our board, Mahmoud Abderrasoul, who is a doctor, and he was one of the first doctors that actually worked in an exclusively COVID addressed hospital from the beginning of the pandemic, offering invaluable services to everybody. And Mahmoud is a heart surgeon who has 11 siblings. His parents came to Greece from Sudan about 40 years ago. They still don't have Greek citizenship. Half of the siblings have Greek citizenship, half don't. And this is a very weird situation. And this is the situation most migrants find themselves in Greece, particularly after the recently imposed restrictions on citizenship acquisition. And this is the background which we have to be aware of. That's why I wanted to start with Mahmoud's picture. So this is what I'm going to talk to you about. As I said, we are the School of Political Studies in Greece, and we participate in various networks, amongst of which I wanted to particularly emphasize our participation in the Thessaloniki Municipality Migrants Integration Council from 2012 until end of 2019. And this is a body that according to Greek legislation, is the only form in which migrants can participate in political life, as they don't have the right to vote in local elections. They can only participate in this. It's a purely consultative body, and unfortunately it is operating rarely and in very few cities. I am wondering about Thessaloniki today. Maybe Paola can inform us about this more. So we were awarded the European Citizens Prize in 2020 by the European Parliament. And as a school, we do education, political education, capacity building on all the topics that you actually mentioned. Of course, we work with projects as most civil society organizations. This is a project very recently finished with UNHCR, where in a media lab, we worked on mobile journalism and with refugees, migrants, and locals working together, developing skills to actually, in mobile reporting, photography, video making, use of social media, which all resulted in their own website where they publish their work, which is live, and you can find it. And of course, which will be continuing through our future work, so that there is continuity and sustainability. We are actually aiming to work with Russian-speaking diaspora communities, and in the summer and the autumn, and have their stories published. And these are communities that, even though live for many, many years in their host countries all over Europe, find themselves in a particularly difficult situation and precarious situation, being torn apart, diaspora communities being torn apart by conflict, by exogenous sort of discourses and events, which are a special situation. Of course, we do also services projects, providing services to refugees and migrants. And this is another European project which focuses on gender-based prevention work with male refugees and migrants. It lasted for almost 3 years, working both with locals, professionals, but also in between groups like intercultural mediators and refugees and migrants themselves, residing in different settings, be it the camps or the urban settings, in Thessaloniki, but also in Yanina and Athens. Of course, this is how most webinars, we all became experts in webinars and capacity building. EPIC is another AMIF project we are participating in. I think it was the previous year than Embracing. Again, a European platform of cities, similarly trying to network and see how much policy harmonization is possible. Of course, from projects, we also draw lessons, and it requires from NGOs who are funded from their work, depending on their success, and this is an issue that we have to discuss amongst ourselves. I wonder to which extent we are allowed to talk about things that didn't go that well, what we very nicely call lessons learned, but be also honest with ourselves. And after we finish each project, every consortium, transnational consortium, come together and say, well, this didn't work that well. And that is a lesson that can be shared. But in our world, this is very often called failure, and it does limit our own possibilities for what we call improvement, but also for sustainability, for continuing. Borderline offensive is work we did with artists, but also actually focusing on dark humor and laughter. Laughter and humor are very sensitive concepts and are very culturally different. And it was a big challenge to talk with migrants, refugees, locals in different European countries, as diverse as Eastern Europe and Southern Europe and Southeast Europe and the Balkans, because we all perceive humor differently. Yet it was very interesting to understand what are, and if there are any kind of commonalities, and how do we go about those. Lots of activities. This is the project I spoke to you about, which shows also what civil society organizations and migrants themselves can do in the field of research, which is something I personally find we should advocate with the Commission, because we can do a lot of it, very high quality research work, policy analysis, thinking, so recommendations and policy briefs that go beyond, what should be done kind of bullet points. And this is something we do not actually value ourselves as civil society organizations enough to undertake and push for. So this is different things we've done. Actually, this Migration and Integration Forum took place in the hall of the Municipal Council in Thessaloniki in 2019, with the invaluable work and support of the then municipal authorities and people like Paula. This is work we do on disinformation, but combating stereotypes, particularly focusing on anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-Christian sentiment in different groups, media literacy, work we have been doing since 2015. This is another AMIF project, older one, when I think we were all hoping in the post-2015 euphoria that this welcoming spirit would permeate politics and societies for a long time. Well, things didn't turn out exactly like this, but it was a very good basis, and we are continuing working with these organizations as well. a lot of migrants and refugees directly involved in the projects, but also local people. Again, this is another capacity building bottom-up project. Again, this is about gender-based violence, this time working with refugee and migrant women, always working with first-line professionals, locals, and refugee women together. It's actually, this is a line that permeates and runs through our work, that we always bring different communities and individuals together. It's never separate. And human rights and rule of law runs through all our work. Again, discussions, joint reflection, different projects advocating against Islamophobia. A very important project that we do in different forms, we continue doing, is building civil society, but also migrants communities' capacity in communication, advocacy, and media, particularly in 2015 or 2014. In Greece, that was quite low. It was very low capacity for migrant and refugee communities to actually document their own needs so that they could go beyond complaining, beyond just saying their grievances, but also producing evidence, data, telling their own, making their own stories, and making their own stories heard, disseminating, learning how to work with media. For some of, at that time, all these things sounded, for partners of ours that were in Amsterdam or in other, in Sweden, in other environments, where, for example, the municipality would cover the rent and utility costs of migrant NGOs' offices. They sounded strange, but in our context, even back, well, throughout the decades, it has never happened that migrants and refugee organizations get any kind of local or central government support. Neither do NGOs really, I mean, unless they participate in very specific services oriented projects. So it is very important to for raising migrants' voices. Again, building capacity, this has been, again, and is always a big focus for us. A platform for voice, a lot of this. Discussing elections, we did discuss elections and local elections a lot. 2013-14, when there was a window of opportunity in Greece for a few months for migrants to participate in local elections. Unfortunately, this window of opportunity was withdrawn or removed by the Supreme Court in Greece, and it's not there any longer. Well, we also worked a lot with municipal media. So we had our own broadcasting show on the radio. So for 4 years, we worked with the migrants group together with locals, and once a week, we had a 2-hour show on municipal radio where we discussed from, asylum and refugee rights to employment rights, to education, but also to culture, to having, our Albanian, I can see Bedri Hoxha here. He is a poet, and he was reading to us Albanian poetry translated in Greek and Greek poets translated in Albanian. Our Senegalese colleagues at that time, apart from wanting to discuss Africa in a different way and change the mindsets. In Greece, they're not colonial as such, but they're definitely quite xenophobic and racist of ordinary people. They even presented Senegalese recipes. So people that everybody could get something from this radio broadcast. And we even managed to become the favorite of taxi drivers, as we also played a lot of nice music as well. And of course, we took the same concept of locals and migrants working together, making stories and broadcasting them in different forms with a neighborhood reporter. So we focused in different neighborhoods. And again, in cooperation with the municipal media and radio, we broadcasted. And broadcasting is very important because it actually shows to all communities what can be achieved, but it is also a reward for migrant communities. And I've recently been to the municipal TV station, and I saw people that I have never seen for how many years now? 7 and 2 is 9 years, or 6 years. And they still remembered, and they still said that this was about the best, one of the best things they've ever done in this media. So this is something we got an award from the Annalyn, or were shortlisted for an award for back in 2012. So this is work that happens over years. It doesn't happen overnight, of course. And we actually grew and came into existence from a project on intercultural education, where we brought 40 actors from different municipalities, to migrants associations, to individuals, to schools, school teachers, to artists, cultural persons, together for a whole year, every Sunday, to have lunch together, and then have workshops and have activities and have a publication in the end. And that's when we decided to establish Symbiosis. A lot of learning and advocacy events. And of course, this goes hand in hand with our the work of our School for Political Studies, which of course is open to everybody. It is a Council of Europe program. Yet our school is very particular because we always include in our annual intake of students, migrants, refugees, and people from minorities, more Roma or else. So this is the kind of seminars we do. This is a program that you might find interesting also for your work in your local context. It is a treasure I have discovered in the web pages of the Council of Europe, which was a bit underused. It's called LIAM, Language Integration of Adult Migrants. There are scenarios, sort of life scenarios for linguistic integration. So no grammar, syntax, and things that are not useful for migrants' lives, but real life that can actually, and real language that takes place while they live in host countries and during integration. We developed our own tool, which is focusing on employment. So language and linguistic structures that are useful for migrants as they work or as they look for a job, because it is not just writing a CV and employability. It is also knowing your rights, talking about your rights, talking about fair wages, fair working conditions, but also being able to talk with your colleagues at work, understand what is being said to you, and respond and have a voice. LIAM exists on the website of the Council of Europe in many different languages, which you might find interesting. So do Google it and see the toolkit. It is a toolkit in different languages. I do not know which countries are compose your consortium, but I'm sure that some of them will find the language there. And this is work that we have been doing for 5 years in different cities all over Greece, different types of capacity building seminars for teachers that work with migrants and refugees, for adults, for children, as this thing, of course, is developed, events, and we developed, but that happened in 2022, this tool, so it's not included in this presentation. And of course, more about gender-based violence and gender equality, since we find this is a very instrumental concept that opens a lot of doors when one works with migrant communities and local communities. So they challenge their own stereotypes and their own preconceived ideas. All of us have them in our heads, and work together, comparing childhood experiences, comparing beliefs, comparing ways of being and of acting. So at the local level, we find this very, very useful. So working on the environment too. And of course, taking people also not just the bottom up, but the up, down, but in a constant exchange and a constant dialogue. Never hierarchically constructed, but cutting through these vertical lines of hierarchy. Taking people to Strasbourg, to the World Forum for Democracy, to other seminars organized there or in Brussels, and actually letting them and offering them the opportunity to participate in what we usually call high-level events. Well, they do exceptionally well, many times much better than others. And again, publications and research, because we find that civil society organizations, first, are very well placed to do that. And secondly, have different things to say. But also self-training books. This is things that we have done that are relevant to your project as well. And then the work with the Migrants Integration Council, which was very valuable. And we continue in other municipalities in Greece, actually. We work now with it in Irakli. And that's where you can find us. And I do hope that we'll have the opportunity to work together more. And I hope I did not abuse your time too much.
Not at all. Thank you so much, Despina, for this very interesting insights. I think you really showed many examples from the work you do. And I want to give now the opportunity to the audience if there are any questions or comments, something that you want to know. Niels?
Yeah, thank you for your input and for the comprehensive overview. I was wondering if there were projects that worked out better than others, and if you could find any structure in this. You see, I'm sorry, I'm lacking the word. If certain project had something in common that worked out better than others regarding the effect, could you talk about that maybe?
Well, I actually do. And if we are discussing, transnational European Commission-funded projects, which is not really the topic of our day today, is the fact that projects that are conceived and are constructed and are governed in a truly participatory and equal way tend to behave this way as they are unrolled and implemented in the field. Projects that are hierarchical are discriminatory amongst the partners and are based on, how can I say, events and outputs that are the brain work of preconceived ideas amongst the few partners, leading partners usually, tend to also exhibit the same kind of lack of democracy as they happen the 2-3 years that they're implemented. This is a very bold statement that I'm making because it is criticizing our own work. But I think we live in difficult times, and it is better that we, find what we have not been doing very well up to now, and try and improve ourselves. For example, I find the current work that we do on political participation of migrants, civil participation, I would call it, because political participation, they're still not allowed to vote in elections. And migrant advisory councils actually have very limited, they have no authority, they have consultative authority. But they are very, very interesting because they allow you to work at the local level and work with municipality employees, the ones that are, the register office, the social services, the different vice mayors that are from, responsible for housing, employment, whatever, in the different countries. And then some migrant communities are extremely well organized and have a lot of things to say, enough more advanced. And this becomes obvious when you discuss issues, for example, as access to public space, from transport to health to hospitals and all of this. So the topics and the themes that bind all of us that live in the same city together. But then you offer really an equal level playing field, and and for everybody to express their real views. And there you find, on specific issues or problems of everyday life, and there you find that very often municipalities lag behind and policymakers lag behind. And migrants have got a lot of interesting things to say, especially if it is a stronger community. That is, and of course, we do a lot of capacity building. So we emphasize, our work, when we are leading work packages, has to do a lot with developing curricula now for migrants and refugees organizations, but also for municipality staff, but also for elected people who, I think this happens across the spectrum in EU member states. They do not feel that they have to learn much or anything. They think that they know everything. But then we offered, especially last year, a series of webinars for municipality workers and elected representatives on gender equality and on gender-based violence. And it just showed how much how huge the gaps are, not only in knowledge, but also in understanding of the issues. And if I am to compare those webinars, similar content webinars, to the ones we did for intercultural mediators and the ones that we did for migrant organizations and intercultural mediators, or frontline workers, of course, humanitarian workers, were far more advanced than municipality employees and representatives in Greece, in their knowledge, in their understanding of the legal and institutional framework, in their knowledge, in their understanding of the issues as well, and far less open and forward-thinking than migrants themselves, discussing masculinities and transgender issues was easier and far more productive with intercultural mediators and migrant and refugee groups than with municipality employees or elected representatives. As surprising as this sounds, they had much more open minds and attitudes to life.
Thank you so much for elaborating on that. Niels, you wanted to add something? No.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
going to follow up. Like, I found this super interesting, so I'm kind of happy that I didn't like pinpoint my question the way I initially wanted to. I was wondering, you were talking, for example, about the radio show, which was perceived super well, apparently. I was wondering of the projects that were perceived well by the host community and by refugees and migrants, like where there was lots of interest and lots of participation, compared to others where there might have been less interest. Do you see any anything in common for the both types of perception?
It's a very good question, but it is a very difficult question to answer because in these 10, 11 years of operation of Symbiosis, the objective conditions in Greece have changed very much or have variated a lot. So it is not, I cannot judge if the same project that we did in 2014 would be as well received today, or if they would be even possible. For example, we don't work with the municipal media any longer. We don't work with the Thessaloniki municipality very much. Anyway, also migrant community, what happened with the 2015 onwards so-called refugee crisis in Greece changed the landscape of how forced displacement and migration is perceived and handled with, changed the NGOs hugely, changed the recipient communities, and this change happened again and again and again. So what I'm trying to say is that all the parameters are changing, so it is difficult to answer. For certain years, all emphasis went to refugees. The only projects that were happening were for refugees. Migrants were as if they did not exist, because all the funding was there, and it was, but also all the political attention went there from all sides, from government, but also from civil society organizations that just followed suit, also from volunteers and from people coming from abroad. They would all prefer to go to Lesbos and work, and possibly, correctly so, in the atrocious conditions, then come and do the painstaking work in a city in the Greek mainland, which was far less exciting, but it was difficult in different ways. And we are talking about funding that could be millions, which meant that NGOs that would do the small nitty-gritty work of, working with migrants in the urban environment wouldn't really. Different, very different. Even municipalities got really into this, and Paola, I stand to be corrected by Paola, but they actually became more interested in migration because of the huge funding that came with what was perceived as the refugee crisis.
Thank you so much again.
Of course, that can have very good effects in the results now. It depends on how we actually approach it.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments what Despina shared? Okay. And thank you so much. I think with the insights you provided, I'm very sure that we will approach you again, because I think there is a lot that we can learn from you also for the future work of Embrace'em. So I'm really happy that you went so much into detail about the work you do, because I think the partners present, but also we as ECHA already see how we could work together and collaborate further. And also thank you a lot, of course, for being so honest when it comes to the issues of EU funding and the challenges that come with that, right? Because I think probably we don't see the audience at the moment, but I'm sure that everyone was like smiling or feeling like very like feeling seen in what you just said, because I think we all know these issues and we hardly dare to talk about. So thank you so much, especially for that, to bring that into the space so that we can work with it and reflect around it. Yes, and if there are no other questions, that was the second session today, and already next week we come to the end of our series with the last two sessions. In these two sessions, we focus even more about stereotypes, language, communication, narratives, queerness, and we will work on the topic of health and pain that we needed to cancel probably after the Living Lab in Heidelberg. But for now, I kindly invite you to join next week's final two sessions. So I hope to see you again there. And thank you all for coming and joining. Have a nice afternoon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.